Fender rust is something that's super common on the NA and the NB Miatas, and it's something that'll happen to pretty much every car unless you do one specific thing to try to avoid it. In this video, I'm going to show you why Fender rust happens on the Miata, I'm going to show you how to prevent it, and I'm also going to show you how to fix it if it started on your car. So what we're going to be doing is basically pulling out the bottom of this fender so we could unleash all the built up road debris and rust and extra crap that's just sitting in here. What we need to do is start by loosening up this fender liner, and then there are a couple bolts down at the bottom, and that'll allow us to pull the fender free and clean it up. Now I'm going ahead and taking an extra step here and taking the fender all the way off, and that way I could prevent rust from starting on the back of it and remove whatever rust is there, as well as clean up this area here which is starting to bubble up. To get this fender liner in a place that you could get the fender off, you have to remove all of these 8mm fasteners that go in around the outside of the fender. Now you don't need to take that lining all the way out if you don't want to. You basically just have to loosen up anything that connects to the fender. Also note that there's one that goes straight up right there, and you'll have to get that too. Once you make it all the way around to the front, there's going to be a fastener there that you have to remove. I'm not going to go through everything super in-depth on how to remove this fender because I do have an in-depth video on my channel on how to remove a fender. But basically you have to remove this fastener here, which right now I have zip tied because my front bumper is already really loose. And then you have to get your front bumper loose and removed if you want to. You don't have to get it all the way removed, but you have to get this able to slide forward because there is a fastener on the front of this fender that you have to get to. So like I said, I have in-depth videos on how to do both of those things on my channel, but right now I'm going to go ahead, get this fender loose, and show you just how much stuff gets built up under the bottom of the fender at the front of the rocker there. Next up, there are two 10mm bolts that go up from the bottom. Now these are likely to be extremely rusty because these sit in that area that gets full of water and mud and junk that comes down into this fender here. So you want to be extremely careful when removing these. That's going to require a lot of loosening a little bit, tightening a little bit, and just trying to free up the bolt so it doesn't snap on you. I had bad luck on the other side. I did snap one of them, so you want to be extremely careful because it's pretty likely to happen. Alright guys, so now the bottom of this fender is free. Let's see how much stuff is in there. Jeez. Alright, so you could see the importance of doing this, because who knows how long all this crap was built up in there. But it's against the back of the fender, it's wet mud and leaves, and that's decomposing and also decomposing your fender as that goes. The reason that this is so important to check is because the way that Mazda designed this car, any fluid that gets down here in front of your windshield drains out this port right here and goes right down behind that fender. Now this often builds up right there and isn't constantly checked, and that's why these cars often rust out so much from behind that fender. And just so you could really see what I'm talking about, I got my hose here, and any water that builds up inside that little pocket there is going to end up draining out of that hole in the side and getting caught up behind your fender. Now obviously there's not going to be tons and tons and tons of water that gets built up in there, but you will get some, and you will get some debris like pine needles and leaves, and that's what happens and collects in there, and you end up with that inside your fender well, rotting out your car from the inside out. So if you just want to do this quick, you could do what I just did and get most of the stuff out and then put your fender back together. Like I said, I'm going to pull mine all the way off and look at the back and see how bad it's rusted, and just seal it back up and make sure it doesn't rust from the inside out. Man. Well guys, there you have it. As you can see, this thing was absolutely full of crap behind that fender. It's rusting away at the body there. I'm going to clean that up, and it's also rusting away at the back of the fender, which I'll show you in a sec. if you want to do this the best way possible, you really should grind this down to bare metal, get all of the rust off, and then seal it up. Since I'm not a perfectionist with stuff like this, and this isn't a show car, I just want to preserve it a little bit, I'm going to use this rust neutralizer, which you just spray on. It converts the rust into a paintable surface and basically just saves you a little bit of time. It doesn't make the problem go away, but it does make it better. So I'm going to go ahead, spray this stuff on there, and then after this stuff sets, we'll be painting this and then moving forward with the car. And as you could see, it does turn the rust black fairly quick. Where there's a little bit heavier rust, it takes a little bit longer to react. So I'm going to let that sit, and then once it does sit, go ahead and give it another coat in like 20 minutes. Alright, now I've got most of the rust that I could get off of this here. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and use this rust neutralizer on it. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you want to get this perfect, you need to sand down all the rust and get it all the way off, and then really seal it up with a good product, and then go from there. But since I'm just doing a fairly quick job that will still do a fairly good job at extending the life of the car, I'm going to go ahead and spray this on there. So I just sprayed some of this chip guard on the back of this fender to help seal everything up. That rust neutralizer does recommend that you actually don't scuff the surface after you apply it, because you don't want to break through that barrier that you created. So I didn't sand it, but since it was all rusty, it was pretty rough, so I think this stuff will still stick pretty good. And that should seal up the back of this fender and extend the life a decent amount. Next up, we're going to go ahead and tackle the other side. I'm just going to mask off the side of the fender, and once again use this stuff because it matches the rockers pretty well and should protect from rock chips and all that stuff pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead, get this thing masked up, and then we'll spray that. Alright, so here's how this fender came out. It looks very good. Obviously, I did do a pretty quick job here, so there are a couple little bubbles in it where I got some drips and where air couldn't escape when I was spraying. And also, I didn't sand the whole thing perfectly smooth, and this coating also doesn't come out perfectly smooth. But for what it is, it came out pretty good. This is a chip guard, so it should help protect against rock chips from the wheel and stuff like that. So that should be good and last a long time. Also, this is unrelated to this video, it's actually on this fender, but I was able to finally hammer out the dent in this fender here. Let me just adjust the camera so you can see it. So that is finally not a big dent. Obviously it's not perfect, but it's way better than it was, and I'm just going to leave it like that because I don't feel like doing more body work right now. So now I'm going to go ahead and tackle this other fender real quick, and then we'll work on the rockers on the car. So now this rocker area has been sprayed with this chip guard. Once again, it's not the absolute best thing to use in this case, but it'll work. Now what I have to do is spray some of this into this top. I'm just going to use that as a container. So I could just brush on right there, cover up the area that's exposed, and sort of blend it in with the rest of the rocker. So guys, that is going to wrap up this video. I'm not going to go over how to reinstall your fender because you should know how to do that, and my other video basically will show you how to do that as well. So this is going to prevent rust. Now you know why rust happens on these cars, and you should be in much better shape with your car, and you'll be able to prevent rust and make the car last a very long time. Please like this video if you found it interesting and helpful, subscribe for more, and I hope you stick around for the next one. Take care.